Come on, bitch, let's go. Come on, get ready, bitches. You haven't seen nothing yet. Come on.
Valentino, Versace, Lamborghini, Bugatti. I got money to burn. I'm single and I'm naughty.
Come on.
Tiffany's, Cartier, Gucci, Armani.
Come on.
Break out your black card, boys. It's time to party.
Hey now from Rome. How you guys doing? Oh my gosh, you can't believe what happened to me in Rome, you guys, seriously. So a few things. Number one, John was showing me something on the Pantheon about the way the building was built, and a taxi driver nearly drove over John's foot, literally made an imprint on his brand new sneakers with the tire wheel. Thank God I was able to get it off, but it was like literally a centimeter from his Achilles tendon. We are so lucky. I couldn't get over it. And then once we got over that shock, we were walking to our apartment that we're renting, broad daylight, tourists everywhere, and out of the blue, we hear this man shouting, and he has this giant rusty nail in his hand, like he's going to stab someone with it. And he's screaming, walking through the crowd. John jumps out of the way, and I just keep walking, like trying to act like nothing's happening because I don't want to draw attention to myself. So we both panicked, but handled it differently. But it was so scary for both of us. We went straight back to our apartment. I was like, I need a nap. It was too much because, you know, there's loads of stabbings in Europe and you just don't imagine how those even can go down. And I sort of got a feel for it up front and personal today, how it can easily happen. There was no polizia, broad daylight, all these people around. This guy could stab someone a bunch of times with this rusted nail and literally disappear in the crowd. No way you'd find him, and I doubt there are cameras there. It's just, wow. It really was like a rude awakening, kind of shaking you out of the beautifulness of the city. There is this kind of erupting lawlessness to the place, which bubbles up from time to time, and it really is wild. I don't know. So that happened. We had like a day to recover. So I decided to do some of the show so I could relax a little bit after all of that. Oh my goodness. But on the positive side, Rome is beautiful. There is an incredible heat wave here. I'm very worried for people that are elderly, that have health issues, that don't have air conditioning. This is not typical of Rome to be 100 degrees. It's crazy. So it's been days of it. And, another social issue I'm seeing here firsthand, kind of shocking. We were lucky. We have air conditioning, but I can only imagine the debilitation for people that don't. And then there was a gas tank explosion that killed 40 people, like a few miles from where we're staying in Rome. It was a lot. But on a different note, happy 4th of July. Congratulations, America, on not having any lone wolf terrorist attacks. Yay. So I was so worried for everybody in the U.S. and everything came out fine. It's so good. Yay, America. But all this international news has made me want to cover some really explosive UK gossip that dropped. Thank you for my Australian and UK patrons for sending it to me. It is really juicy stuff. So they were like, we need to look out for the Americans and make sure they hear it. All right. So that is part of today's show. We have other things we're covering. I'm doing a little Miami. I'm doing a little kind of highbrow content at the end. I want to talk about a special story that I have with Michael Madsen. And I have some insight in the gossip that's been spilling about him because he passed away the other day. And so the tabloids have been covering all sorts of different scandals to do with him as they do. And I have some takes from personal experiences I want to share with you and about his wife. Oh, and David Glasser and Harvey Weinstein. You'll understand later. Also, a scandal erupted on Dr. Phil. God, I love Dr. Phil scandals. And then Joe Gorga a lawsuit got leaked from like late last year where he was sued for his utilities to do with one of his buildings for $28,000. Everybody loves a Gorga lawsuit. God bless those people. They get sued a lot. But they're still standing. So we have a lot to cover today. You're going to have fun on this one. Now, last week in the comments, I did notice some people complaining on the public platforms, which is all listening platforms and YouTube, that the episode gets going and they, I guess, get excited about a part of the episode and they can't hear it because it goes into the Patreon. But I remind everybody that this is the way that I make money. I'm the sole supporter of my son. I receive no child support from my ex. And this is the only way I make money and am able to do as many shows as I do for everybody, covering all the topics. So everybody's like what they want to hear is covered in a deep, gossipy, cool way, plus with my Dana stories. And I need this support and help. So I do that intentionally because I need people to sign up for the Patreon because I'm a one-man show and I have to support myself and my son. So I'm sorry that you guys get angry. It does make me proud that you want to listen to the content and the stories that bad, but I hate to piss people off. It's just I need to make a living and I hope you understand, and I wanted to say this on today's show. Now, it's only $6 a month and you get to listen to the danawilkey 4-part origin story, which the patrons will tell you is worth the $6 alone because it's juicy AF. If I do say so myself. And remember, Bravo is a niche fan base. Bravo themselves only get 60 to 70,000 views on like the most juicy video they drop on their YouTube channel. That's very little revenue from advertising. You can only make hobby money doing YouTube and podcasts advertising revenue covering Bravo. As you expand other topics, you can start to make a living, but it takes a long time. And I found that I was only able to produce a proper living through Patreon and through my amazing supporters who I collaborate with all the time in what I say to you guys in terms of crowd gossip that they find, as well as my own personal stories. So I hope that helps you guys understand. And keep in mind, I won't lie. I'm not going to pretend that, I know people I don't. There's no blinds concept beyond me using it as a leapfrog to actually cover something. So I'm trying to just tell you how it really is, okay? And a lot of people that are pretending they're making a lot more than they are, okay? Because I know. I drop about 5 different types of shows, all different gossip a week. From little quick audios I throw down to the bonus audio I do for the Diamond members every Tuesday, the podcast, which you guys get a taste of out here, a confessional video deep dive on a different topic each week, and it ranges and it covers every kind of thing. We just did, Bitcoin's founder. One week, I did a deep dive of Real Housewives of Orange County, Katie Janella's divorce from her first husband. It just really ranges. I did a deep dive on all the new next gen NYC kids before they got famous. So it's worth it. You get a lot of content for $6 a month, and I never take a vacation. I haven't taken a vacation, not one show in 4 years since this started. Okay, so that's it. There it is. So first, I want to talk about some royal gossip because it was pretty astonishing when Sally Bedell Smith dropped on her Substack, because I love her Substack, that she had gotten some tea from Lady Elizabeth Anson about how the Queen Elizabeth felt about Meghan Markle and confirmed gossip that Dan Wooten, who is a very controversial royal coverage journalist, had gossiped about, that he had heard. Dan Wooten, I think, has controversial tea, and he's been silenced a few times, but generally speaking, I think he really tries to tell a perspective that he thinks is true based on the people he's talking to that he can, share or not share, and depends on the instance. Now, he was very famous because he was sued while working as, I think, executive editor of The Sun by Johnny Depp in a libel case because The Sun referred to Johnny Depp as a, quote, wife beater. And Dan Wooten, to be fair, felt that he had an overwhelming amount of evidence to show that this was the case. And we saw some of this evidence play out in the Amber Heard Johnny Depp trial. But Johnny Depp is so loved, let's face it, no one really gives a shit what Johnny Depp does. He's, kind of godlike in that way. There's a few other people in the world like that, but Johnny Depp is one of them. And that's because he is very sweet to people that have needed his help over the years. So you can kind of look beyond some of his other issues, mainly to do with abusing drugs and alcohol because he had such a difficult childhood. But I digress. So that's Dan Wooten. Now, the woman I just mentioned who did the Substack, Sally Bedell Smith, she was a contributing editor for Vanity Fair. She reported for the New York Times and also Time Magazine. And she's kind of an expert. Well, she is an expert at royal biographies. Okay. So Sally Bedell Smith has tea that she's been leaked over the years from very important people, and she's finally decided to share some of it through Lady Elizabeth Anson, who she calls Liza in her Substack. But what was shocking is that Lady Elizabeth Anson appears to have been told by the Queen some really interesting gossip about her take on Meghan Markle. And the way that it is delivered, it does really seem like something Queen Elizabeth would say. It's politically correct, it's polite, and it shows huge respect for the monarchy and all of the years of dedication that that woman gave to the monarchy with a lot of sacrifice, let's face it. Well, this woman, Lady Elizabeth Anson, whose actual premarital name was Lady Elizabeth Georgiana Shackerley, she was a very famous British party planner, writer, socialite, and she was first cousin once removed of Queen Elizabeth II. BFF, called her a few times a week, was her confidant. She was loyal to the Queen. But I think certain things she did want to leak, right? Just to kind of set the record straight. And so she would communicate with certain journalists that she trusted from time to time with some tea before she died in November of 2020. Now, you might have also heard of other parties that Lady Elizabeth Anson did. She worked with Mick Jagger and Sting. I have been to a Sting party, but not under great circumstances. His wife, Trudy's best friend, was going out with a guy that asked me out on a date and took me to this party, but I didn't know that I was considered the evil one because he had just broken up with his girlfriend for 20 years. So imagine Trudy invites him, maybe trying to reset him up with his girlfriend, and he brings me, and I walk into the lion's den, and Trudy obviously instantly hates me because, I'm the enemy and I'm just trying to have a good time. I have no idea what's going on. I'm just excited to see Sting play in an intimate setting because Sting always did at his events. And usually there was a charity element to it too, Oh my God, the drama, the cold shoulders I was getting was scarring really. He didn't end up getting back together with her. So anyway, that's sidebar. Okay, so Lady Elizabeth Anson is friendly with Sally Bedell Smith, and she's getting tea from her over the years, but nobody knows it. So it turns out that Sally had gone to a bunch of parties that Liz, as Lady Elizabeth liked to be called by her friends, and so she got really friendly with her. And then Liz said, "You can call me Liza." And this was the name for Sally when she was referring to things that Lady Elizabeth told her. Now, Liz had nicknames for the Queen, which you might find interesting. This is Lady Elizabeth Liz, and she called her Jemima, but nobody knows why, and the number one lady. And we find out that she was a massive source for Sally Bedell Smith's biographies that she published in between Vanity Fair gigs for books like Diana in Search of Herself, Elizabeth the Queen, Prince Charles, and George VI with Elizabeth. Now, Lady Elizabeth, aka Liz, had a 22-room estate tucked away in Holland Park and Notting Hill neighborhood area of London. So she was super rich. And she invited this writer, Sally, over several times and for parties, as I mentioned earlier. And this is where she gets her tea. Love it. And I don't mean the kind you drink, like real tea time, gossip time. So Liza told a story about how she had had a party that she threw for Queen Elizabeth and Prince Philip. And it was at Claridge's, which is this gorgeous hotel in London. And they had 500 people there. And she decided to make one of the elements of the event watching a video of Princess Diana and Charles' wedding. And she talks about how the Queen, sitting next to Princess Grace and Nancy Reagan, who was First Lady at the time, and they were just watching this wedding footage over and over again. And there was dancing to Lester Lennon's orchestra and, all into the night. But it was interesting for her to watch her friends and these important people watching themselves, in a sense, on this video that was showing on a bunch of screens of Princess Diana's wedding. And she took that in. That made a big kind of distinct impression on her. And then she remembers hearing when things started to go kind of downhill with Princess Diana, Queen Elizabeth had specifically requested Diana come to dinner on a few occasions, and Princess Diana refused to come to dinner. And as a result of that, Prince Charles was asked to go get her by Queen Elizabeth. And he would go and beg her to come to dinner, and she just wouldn't because she was bulimic. And nobody really knew it, but they kind of sensed it. And it turns out that Lady Elizabeth had an eating disorder too. So she kind of had a feeling why Diana might be doing what she was doing, but she didn't really know what to do about it. But she couldn't imagine actually saying no to the Queen to come to dinner. It was so incredible to her. And I bring this up because there's a lot of characteristics in Prince Harry that Princess Diana had. And I believe that many of their rebel characteristics came from Diana, Princess Diana's maternal grandmother, whose name was Frances Ellen Work. Okay, she was an American heiress, and she has such an interesting life. I did a whole thing on her. I'm supposedly related to Princess Diana. I had a genealogy expert come on the Dishing Drama Dana show and break that news to me, so I was pretty excited about that. I think it must come from the American side, I guess. Anyway, the embarrassment for the Queen, for Charles, even for Diana in her own way, was a lot for the people that witnessed it. I guess what I'm thinking is, as I read the rest of this tea to you guys or give you the highlights, is maybe Queen Elizabeth was a little bit triggered by this with Meghan Markle. Just remember I said it. You can see what you think. Anyway, Lady Elizabeth did find Princess Diana very brave. Not for that reason, that she stood everybody up for dinner, but because she took Charles' hand in marriage and allowed herself to be so public when she was so shy. And she said, that's brave. Another interesting highlight was that Liz was asked to help the Queen and Prince Philip get Princess Margaret to do some royal duties that she didn't want to do when one of their cousins died. They didn't want to interact with Margaret because they felt like she would not only reject what they wanted her to do, but also be kind of a pain in the ass about it. So Liz goes in and does her best to try to convince Princess Margaret to do what Queen Elizabeth wants, but her sister is really hard for her to control. And Queen Elizabeth always is championing to have Princess Margaret do what she's supposed to do, like the honorable thing, the noble thing, the monarchy thing. And she's another rebel in the Queen's life. And a lot of people are like, well, it was because she was another female. She was always going to be second fiddle to Queen Elizabeth. So that made her rebellious and want to stand out in her own regard in a different way. And she was obviously in a very fast scene with artists, with, completely different morals than what a general monarchist would have, right? Smoking, drinking, partying. Think Hollywood. So the Queen struggled with this too. And I thought to myself, could it be that the reason the Queen loved her sister so much but didn't want to like really have negative interactions with Margaret was because she found that triggering. Another person who doesn't want to do what they're supposed to in the monarchy, and Queen Elizabeth, all she did her whole life was what she was supposed to. Even when she didn't want to, she did it anyway because it was her duty. So I can imagine how triggering this would be for the Queen, who's like, why can't everybody else just do what I do, which is like keep your eye on the ball and remember that you're royalty and you're supposed to transcend everything. And it's important. It's a job, but more importantly, it's your duty to be blessed in the position that you were born into. It's not a negative like Prince Harry viewed it as. Oh, I was born against my will into this family. I had no control. Has everybody forgot the historical concept of the divine right of kings? That was that monarchies got their authority to rule by a derived directive from God. Okay, so you were not accountable to anybody on this planet, only God itself, right? That's who you got your authority from, and that's the only guy you had to report to. Nobody on this earthly plane. So it's like shocking to me. Did they not learn this? Like, this is a big thing. Also, something else that shocked me was, haven't they realized, Prince Harry especially, that the Roman monarchy, for example, which I just learned all about at the Pantheon, was actually completely destroyed because they decided to take a political viewpoint on Mussolini. And as a result of that, when Mussolini lost, which thankfully he did, that ended the monarchy, which is why Queen Elizabeth was so smart and said, never explain, never complain, and don't take a viewpoint. Because she knew, probably from studying many monarchies, which I'm sure she did, being that she was so dedicated to her job, she would have known that that has been what undermined other monarchies in the past and destroyed their line and power within their, figurehead status within their countries. Sadly, in all of, I think, the hoity-toity teachings of tea time and, the regal behavior and protocols you're supposed to follow and learn, somewhere at the basis of it, the spirit of the monarchy and what they are supposed to do and represent got lost with these kids. And I do think it has to do with how triggered Princess Diana was from her experience participating in the monarchy. So I do think the kids took a lot of that on. And I think Prince William probably had a sit down with the Queen and she said, like, this is all on you and here's the burden you carry. And he accepted the burden. But Prince Harry didn't, much like Queen Elizabeth's sister, Margaret, which I would imagine was all sorts of, like I said, triggering for the Queen. So this all builds up to Meghan Markle, who is yet another rebel, who doesn't see the value of the monarchy, who doesn't want to participate in the procedures and protocols and belittles them. Oh my gosh, imagine Queen Elizabeth when she walks in, right? Oh gosh, no, not with Prince Harry too, who's the most vulnerable for this type of thing because he's already got a huge chip on his shoulder because of what happened to his mother, Princess Diana, because remember, he says in his book that he believes for a very long time that either Princess Diana has disappeared and not told anyone so she could have peace and she's not really dead and somehow like MI6 helped her, or he believes she's been murdered later by the monarchy. So like think of what Prince Harry is like, where his headspace is at, and the Queen as a grandmother is like trying to get him out of that. Well, now I'm going to play Dan Wooten reading a section of the Substack to do with Meghan Markle after what I've said here for you to consider. I'm going to leave a little of his commentary, but not too much because I want you to hear the tea.
Okay, here's the headline. An insider's view of the royal family. With parties at Dudley House, quiet dinners with close friends, and celebrations for her 80th and 90th birthdays, everything was going happily for the Queen until Harry met Meghan. Meghan could turn nothing into trouble. Harry wrote to me and said they were going another way. We're called Lisa. Now, Lisa is the name that Sally Bedell-Smith uses for Lady Elizabeth Anson. He said, I am close to my grandmother and she is content with this. When I spoke with the Queen, she said she is not content at all. Lisa was not upset, but she added, Meghan could turn into nothing but trouble. She sees things in a different way. According to Lisa, the Queen was dismayed that Harry had asked the Archbishop of Canterbury to perform the wedding service in St. George's Chapel without first requesting permission from the Dean of Windsor. Harry seems to think the Queen can do what she wants, but she can't, said Lisa. On the religious side, it is the Dean of Windsor's jurisdiction. As a result, Lisa said that Harry had blown his relationship with his grandmother. She said she was really upset. I was shocked when the Queen told me this. How she was so saddened. I had no idea about the conversation. That he was rude to her for 10 minutes. They had tea with her the day before yesterday. She was trying to find out about the wedding dress and Meghan wouldn't tell her. So let's just think about that for 1 minute. Prince Harry treating the greatest living monarch at the time, and I would argue actually the greatest British monarch of all time, with so much disrespect that he berated her on the phone for 10 minutes. Now, of course, I first reported that phone call. But to hear the Queen's cousin actually point out the emotional impact, the toll that it took on the late Queen. When we spoke 2 weeks before the May 19th wedding, Lisa, that is of course Lady Elizabeth Anson, had just heard from the Queen. The number one lady, I call her Jemima, so Jemima is now a code name for the Queen, says the jury is out on whether she likes Meghan. My Jemima is very worried. In Lisa's view, Harry is besotted and weak about women. We hope, but don't quite think she is in love. And then this is the line. This is the key line, folks. We think she engineered it all.
For the full scoop, join the Dishing Drama Dana Patreon. The link is in this audio description. It's only $6 a month and you'll get the best information and tea about the things you care about and even the things you don't know you care about. What are you waiting for?